Hi, everyone. Tatiana Kolovu here, coming to you from sunny today, Bloomington, Indiana. I know the weather is crazy all over the country in the United States, and I hope you are having a great day, end to your day if you're across the pond, or start to your day if you're on the other side of the coast. I quite often, once a month, produce the live LinkedIn show that is tethered usually to my LinkedIn Live or LinkedIn newsletter, Stronger. And this month, we talked about communicating across many different generations in the workplace. Now, as I get started, when you come on, we are recording this so you can see it later. But if you're joining us live, please tell me where you're coming in from, maybe what your weather is like today, and what questions you have as we get started. I was with a group of senior leaders. They were all C-level suite leaders, and we were talking about communication. And as we got started, every one of them, with a big sigh, talked about the challenge that they have in, number one, keeping up with all the different channels that are available in the workplace today, keeping up with the load and level of communication that they have to respond to, that information is coming to them. And they also talked about the challenge they have communicating in different ways with different groups and trying to streamline all of this. So as you're thinking of joining us here today, if you have questions that relate to differences in channels and differences in communicating with the different audiences and trying to be more efficient, you're in the right place. That's what we're going to be talking about. Now, as you're coming in, again, tell us about your weather. Arizona, oh my gosh, I was talking to my friend Jim in Arizona who said 100 days of 100+ degrees this summer. It cooled off for a little bit and now it's back to the heat again. So Fred, my friend, stay cool. As we think about communicating or channels for communication in the workplace, we have these anymore, our portable computers that are in our hands at all levels and all times. And as you are considering that as one of the channels of communication, when I teach communication, I always talk about knowing your audience and knowing what your audience needs. So British Columbia drizzle, welcome. Shelby, we can jump in and throw one of our first slides. In the newsletter, Stronger, I talked about 3 go-to strategies that are standard, and they have to do more with how we are better communicators. Number 1, don't assume that your best choice of channel is what everyone else likes. So respect differences and respect needs that others have around flexibility or around accessibility. So don't do one size fits all. You're the one that has to flex in order to get along with everyone else as it comes to communication channels. And then when I say flex, be flexible, because you may know that somebody only does or their attention is higher when you are using texting, SMS, as we say in Europe, versus if you have to write an email. Or quite often you can communicate quicker to someone. They prefer an audio message versus a written one. And finally, help the team set some ground rules or sit down together and say, how do we want to communicate best? Now, in the newsletter, I also said, if you're a leader, there are certain things you need to do even more because you are the one that has to set the tone. And I talked about 4 specific things. The first one being exactly, Shelby, if we want to change the slide. The first one, if you're a leader, we want to talk about projecting or being inclusive, or making sure that you are making sure that you're respecting everyone's needs or everyone's different ways. And by the way, as we say that, this happens to be the same for any type of communication mode. So we're not just talking about channels, but imagine if you say in a meeting, does anyone have any questions? If you only accounted for verbal questions versus giving people a chance to email something or giving them the agenda ahead of time so they can participate, that's a way of being inclusive and making sure that not just the people raising their hands get to have their voice heard. As we talk about different channels and with technology constantly improving and moving, we want to make sure to provide training. I know I've watched several LinkedIn learning courses on how to use different tools. And we want to create a feedback channel. Is it working or not? I tell teams constantly to take a pulse of where things are, a temperature check, and once a month or once every quarter to say, how are we doing? What can we do better? And you as the leader have to start that conversation, and you have to give feedback to yourself first. Finally, lead by example. In the newsletter, I talk about the leader who, because it's easier for her or him after the kids go to bed, pound out 100 emails that everyone receives in their inbox after 11 p.m. Well, that doesn't really set an example. It probably makes people nervous. And thankfully, there's many opportunities to postpone your posts. So as we get started, thanks for coming in. And we say, oh, my friend Miguel, I need a translation. Send it to me in English. I'm not too flexible with Spanish. And I can do a translator after and respond to you. So as we're thinking about the workplace and different generations having different preferences on different communication channels, I couldn't think of a better person to join me to discuss this. The reason is she is a marketing expert. She teaches creativity and teaches branding and anything that has to do with communicating around a brand. And she also owns an agency, a small boutique 80/20 agency that is in Bloomington, Indiana, where we are, that works and does real work with teams, with brands, and highlighting them and putting their name out there. Let's bring in my friend Kelly King. Kelly is also a professor in the Kelly School of Business, Kelly without an E for Kelly School of Business. And she was even teaching today. And Kelly has also written the Gen Z dictionary, a quick scope or a quick refresher in thinking about how we communicate with Gen Z, one of the 4 generations active in the workplace. Hold it up, Kelly. We're going to be sending these out to some lucky winners. And before I forget, we also, if you hashtag stronger as you are joining us, we will send one of these to you as a present in the raffle that we have. So Kelly, you and I have spent a lot of time talking about this topic and thinking about how can every person operate effectively in the workplace as it relates to using communication channels. And what's the most important thing they need to think about? I've talked enough. I'm going to pause and turn the question over to you.
Hey, Tatiana, thanks for having me. This is a blast to be on this LinkedIn Live with you. I think the most important thing is respecting others and that not everyone is just like you. And that's one of the takeaways or lessons I say at the end of my semester. I give some life lessons on just remember, not everyone is just like you. And it seems like a very simple, no kidding comment, but you have to remember that everybody is coming from a different generation, a different background, race, culture, socioeconomic environment. There's all kinds of reasons why people have different perspectives on life and very importantly on their communication style. So I think respecting that everyone's got a different take on how to handle communication and life in general is really important. It's just a good life skill.
Right. And we get away from that. I know for me, email is the bane of my existence. I need to clean it out all the time. I pick up my phone and I delete messages that I don't want there to get in my way. But I know that some people really, really depend on it and communicate because they like to file and they like to go back and find something. I much prefer to text, or I much prefer to leave a voice memo in order to get someone's attention. But some people like it better. So I have to respect that. And I have to make sure to remember that as well.
Yes. On that point, email, I give some boundaries, and you talked about that and giving boundaries.
Mhm.
And I go and I work with Gen Z, and I have students who are Gen Z. So we have to do both. I have the love and hate relationship with email because you have to have it. You can't get away with or wait without it. But if it's quick, speed is really important. So if it's a quick communication, I prefer just shoot me a text. And please, I don't want to leave you waiting, because if you don't want a quick answer
Yeah.
and I can give it to you, do it then. But if it's longer and this is going to become or if it's long and I want to go back to it,
Yeah.
especially if it's searchable. I also coach my people. It's like, don't just put a one line in the subject line, make it searchable so I can go back to it. So I know what that
Go for it.
conversation is. And I make a very concerted, strong effort to make my own subject lines searchable so I know what I'm looking for,
Right.
because boy, oh boy, when you're trying to go back after, months, you're like, oh my gosh, I've got to find that email. It makes it really, really helpful.
Can't find anything. I'll give you an example. Again, I do a lot of drive and dial where I remember something. Hey, Siri, text this person, say this. But I'll also do an audio message, which is one of the latest features on the iPhone, which disappears. So if you leave information that the other person has to retain, such as flight information. So I work with my cousin who does my flights, and I'll say, I want to leave from this time and this time in this city. And then poof, it's gone. She'll message me back and say, don't do that ever again, because I can't look back to it. So that's an example of me being a bad communicator as it relates to channels. So know your audience and don't assume they are like you. That's really important. But we talk about, at some point, you have to set some guardrails when you're working with the team. You work in your agency with your clients, you work with your suppliers or people that are contractors for you, and you have interns and you have employees. So what are some of the guardrails? What are some of the ground rules that you set, and you set them together, that help you communicate better in the workplace as it relates to channels?
So pretty much we go 9 to 5. If it's 9 to 5, we're communicating, and I expect hopefully a response, and I should be responding to them. I tell everybody, if I don't respond to you within 24 hours, I'm hoping it's within a couple hours, but I give myself a little bit longer, 24 hours. If I haven't responded, yank my chain. And I say that to everybody in a nice way. I'm like,
Yeah.
you will not be offending me. You'll be helping me out because I probably missed it and it got buried. And that is what I'm always worried about. I hope I didn't miss an email. But at the same time, I say, if it's important, you've got to, I give the flexibility. Please reach out to me, because I would love to answer that quick or urgent message if it's super important. I had an incident just this past weekend with a client, and I had to text him on a Sunday at noon and say, hey, the credit card is compromised. Can you jump on a call, or do you want to deal with this right now? And we looked into it. We actually could, and then we changed to email, and he actually switched. So I was like, okay, I'm experiencing this communication channel, because I thought it was hot to trot and we had to do it like right there on Sunday afternoon. But he let it wasn't as urgent, and he said, oh yeah, we'll deal with that tomorrow. I'm like, okay, we'll deal with that tomorrow. And so
Right.
it wasn't as important to him. And he was from the boomer generation, so he loved email. He didn't want to be text, and I'm kind of surprised he didn't want to call. But that's the difference in all those generations. Just so you know, that like the boomers love to talk. The ones older than that, they love letters. They love to get mail. They read the mail versus us. And then the millennials, they love the texting. It's funny, the Gen Z, I was just talking to my Gen Z, coworker, and I said, well, how do you like to communicate? What's your favorite way to communicate in personal and in business way? And he likes texting. He does well with, formal emails or just communicating professionally, but his favorite is face-to-face. And I was shocked. And he said, face to face is making a comeback. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to share that with everybody, because I loved hearing that, because everybody thinks that the Gen Z people or Gen Z audience or Gen Z younger generation just wants to be digital all the time.
Yeah.
They're tired of digital. They love to be together now. It's that basic human need is to be
Sure.
together and that sense of human connection. So I think that's really important.
And building community. I enjoy being in the classroom so much. We all have gone through COVID times of teaching online. But I also must say that the younger generation is interacting with employers and internship potential recruiters so much in through the camera anymore. It's not as much in person
Right.
before they go in person. So they have to really have a strong camera presence and strong way to project energy as it relates to being on camera. If you've just joined us, Glenn is saying, yes, face-to-face is making a comeback, and we're happy for that because those skills, yeah, I would say that's the highest level of skills to train for in order to present yourself, to communicate your brand or ask for something or get something approved. And as you take away some of the context of face-to-face, things get to be a little bit, more laid out. Especially if you're writing or if you are texting, it's even shorter. So it's good to train in the difficult arena. If you're joining us, please send us questions you may have, issues you may have had in this topic of cross-generational communication in the workplace, and hopefully we can discuss it too. So glad to see that face-to-face comeback is happening. What are some ground rules? The number one, the group I was with was talking about, for sure, do the blind copy, everyone, so that there's not a chance to reply to all. However, when you do blind copy, everyone, or when you don't blind copy, everyone knows who else is hearing this. So there's a reason for that to happen, but you run the risk of everyone replying to all, which is kind of, I think, like the oldest since email happened. People make that mistake. And then, of course, your email implodes.
Yes, those email threads. And that's when you should be triggered. Once it gets longer than 5 threads, to say, hey, let's all jump on a Zoom call, or if you can go in person, then say, let's just have a conversation and hash this out or figure it out, because those threads and going back to them and trying to find the information or the link in them can be a pain. And when you're under pressure, it's tough to find them when you're under pressure to find something quickly.
Yeah. And when you're on your phone, for me, I can't find things as easily. Natasha says, yes, the Gen Z are here. I'd rather meet face-to-face, get on email or on a call. It's so much more efficient if you have that. I do think the group that I was with said, if there's more than 3 or 4 threads, we're having a 15-minute meeting. That's it. Get on a call. Even if you can't open your camera, just get on there so we can end this. And then maybe someone writes a summary of, we decided to do this, put it in an email so it can get filed and it can be recalled again. It's possibly the number one ground rule. I would say another ground rule is if you send a message after, unless it's urgent, and if you send something after laptops have been shut down, don't expect a response until the next day. Because if you as the leader say that, or if sometimes in the subject line I'll say open tomorrow morning, or for when you have time, or I'll put it in the subject line so the other person knows. But that's so important to set the tone from the top, would you say?
Oh, absolutely. I usually do the same thing. I don't expect you to respond till Monday or whenever it is, but they know I'm just catching up. And that sets the expectation that I am not trying to stress you out. Because I know when you get, especially if they're reporting to me, that they're like, oh my gosh, I've got to stop what I'm doing and go respond to Kelly. I'm like, oh no, that is no, I'm just trying to keep this project rolling and getting my job done. But sometimes people, the world has changed. During this week, I was speaking with a brand manager, setting up teams for my course, and I was sending out emails, and I could tell she was after hours. I'm like, okay, she's a working mom. I knew she was a working mom. And I said, hey, how about this? Because I was just responding to her email, and we were kind of having a conversation at about 10 or 10:30 at night. But that's how she was rolling. And I'm like, I'm with you. I get it. I know when you have kids and you can't get to your catching up stage or phase of your workday until after the kids are in.
And someone who's a working mom may not be offended, may be relieved that you're there and you're ready.
Yes.
That works for you. Shelby's putting on her working mom hat and says, there's just too many channels of communication. Any suggestions? My suggestion, Shelby, first would be to say, what's our preferred mode of communication? Shelby, you and I have gone back with this, where Shelby has said, don't text me, do email, because I keep track of those better, or we're in Notion, or we're just, let's pick up the call quicker. But again, I find myself guilty as shooting a text. I think I even did it today when there was another meeting going on, versus sending an email. There is a lot, and I like your idea of flexing with people that you said, Kelly, of being okay emailing in the evening if that works for you. But when there's a team, and this is working with others, I think knowing everyone's situation is helpful, because I wouldn't want the rest of the group to feel like they should also be online, right?
No, absolutely not. And that shouldn't be, if it's a big team project, I like stick to office hours, unless you all agree we're going to jump on at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock to deal with this urgent matter. And you can even put it in your signature of, like, for faster service or fastest response. Like I have another client, and she says, I can't usually, I don't respond for at least sometimes 2 or 3 days, just because she's busy and traveling or doing all kinds of stuff. And she's a working mom. She says, if there's something urgent, please call so-and-so. And she leaves the number on her signature. They will track me down, and I'm happy to help you. But she just wanted to set the expectations, which I think is what we're talking about. Set the expectations. Like, don't expect me to respond. You still are important to me, because sometimes when somebody responds really quickly, you're like, wow, they think I'm really important. And when they don't, they think, oh, they don't care about me. And that's just not true. So I think setting the expectations is really helpful.
And then our friend Senga said the delayed response is good as well. And I think most all tools now have the ability to do that. So if you need to get it off your to-do list and mark that you've said it, you can now do that. That was not always the case, and was not as easy to do.
Yes, that scheduling thing is super helpful.
Yeah. Let's shift a little bit from things we all, in the last 5 years, I can think of Slack or Asana or some of the other, Notion, for example, tools that we use on everyday projects and work that have popped up that we didn't know before. What have you learned to do better, and what do you still struggle with, Kelly?
I still struggle with all the platforms and trying to know where I should be. It haunts me of which, because I have multiple email accounts and stuff. So wrangling that, it's just really hard. So I try to let people know this is my priority email. So if you need my attention, this is where I'm on the most. And then also, it's when to have the in-person stuff, when it's an important conversation. I think it's important to know when you need to hop on a call, because that human element and that energy, which you were talking about, can be so important. Because when you're talking about HR or personnel stuff or things like that, email can be so cold that you just say, you know what, let's just hop on a call, or a quick, really quick Teams or Zoom or FaceTime. Like, that's the other thing that my Gen Zer loves. He says, if it's not person, he goes, I said, do you actually talk on the phone? Do you ever talk on the phone? And he goes, talk on the phone? I'm like, yeah. He goes, no, I FaceTime. I'm like, oh, that's even better. Like, why am I not FaceTiming more?
All the apps have it. WhatsApp has it, and you can get on it with Instagram, and of course on the phone. So do you ever have you ever tried to learn something in order to be more effective because others are using it? Or do you said you struggle with the multiple email accounts? I do too.
We tried Monday, and it was not cheap at the time, and it is very slick. It's an awesome program. It's super robust. But it was just another channel, and I loved it. They had moving llamas to tell your productivity and stuff, but it was just, I had to then log into Monday to get on to see all the accounts, and the link is on Monday. I'm like, oh my gosh, can you just text me the link? I mean, sometimes simplicity is better. So we use a spreadsheet for all of our stuff, and we really went more old school, the digital old school versus the So that's really not good for these platforms, but sometimes less is
Sim-
more.
what-
Simplifying.
Whatever works. Yeah. And then you can't get on the spreadsheet because you're using a different email and you can't remember what email you used to get on that spreadsheet or on the sheets or whatever. I mean, it can become maddening, and simplicity is important. That's where sometimes picking up the phone or communicating, if you and I are meeting and working on a project, maybe we have, with my grad assistant, I have a once a week standing meeting where we kind of go through the checklist, and it takes away so much more of the back and forth quite often.
Yes,
Um,
and scheduling meetings, that can take a lot of time, so that recurring meeting, I think, helps with the communication. You know you're gonna have those status meetings at the exact same time.
sure. I know Notion is something that I've started using lately, or I've used when we travel abroad, WhatsApp groups. Some of our undergraduate students still use Group Me, which is not as popular internationally. Again, those are more and other platforms to communicate with, but it's fun to be able to share photographs or videos or anything when you are traveling and you're doing trips outside of the US. If you are with us, questions that you think are important that you want to hear from us and want us to include in the discussion that relate to the topic of cross-generational communication channels, and also hashtag stronger. So we put you into the drawing for the Tumblr. As we talked about setting priorities, things that we struggle with, what's most important, and talked about knowing your audience. Let's shift a little bit now, Kelly, and talk about specifically Gen Z, the students, undergraduate, because I also have MBAs who are older, the undergraduate students that are in our courses that are applying to go into jobs that maybe many of our friends that are joining us on this live will be working with, will be recruiting, will be interviewing, and possibly will be working for in a few years as they proceed, as they move up in the corporate ladder. You have a dictionary around wording that's used. I find it, I think I find, and I learn it also through my kids who are Gen Zers. But when I look at Instagram or I hear them talking in class, how important is that we learn these? And let me take a step back and say, what are the values that Gen Z is bringing in the workplace that we need to learn from?
The two values I have noticed that are most prominent is they love flexibility. So if you are an employer of Gen Z staff, give them, they would rather have flexibility than extra money in general. What I've found is they really like to have the ability to, like, if I want to go on a trip or something, have the ability to do that. Or if I want to go do my yoga class in the afternoon and work late at night, as long as I get the job done, is that
Mhm.
okay? If that's okay, they love that. They
Mhm.
don't like the fact that something is super rigid and they can't have flexibility to have more balance in their life, which makes
Sure.
sense. And I respect that. They also set they like to have boundaries. Like, they are very good at saying, nope, not going to do that. That's my
Mhm.
yoga time or something, whatever, which is great. When we grew up or when we were younger in the workforce, it was like work came first and we stopped everything for
Yeah.
our employer, which was kind of crazy, but also kind of good. I don't know. What is that? What is better? But
No, I think we have a lot to learn from Gen
yeah,
Z and the ones of us that did never stop working. There's
right.
absolute great value for that. I agree, I respect, and I listen. Yes.
Exactly. So I respect them too, because I would have not had the guts to say, no, I can't do that. I would have like, okay, I guess I won't go to that whatever concert and I'll stay and work all night and do what it was crazy. So they set their boundaries, but they have such strong values. I'm so excited for that generation. I could go do a whole talk on them because they're gonna help our entire society because they have very strong core values. They really stick up and respect diversity. They're all about the environment. They're socially conscious and they're environmentally conscious. So know that and be careful of what you say. Like, don't be joking around about, you know, different genders or different,
Who knows?
anything, but
Mhm.
they will call you on it, and they might not think the joke is funny. So
Mhm.
be careful with those hot topics, because they are probably more evolved than us who grew up with different stereotypes.
Right. Luke is saying that's probably going to change when they all get married and have kids. And life
True.
changes you.
Yeah.
Situations in life change you. But I think that need for flexibility will always be there. And there'll probably be more ways to communicate and be um, and accommodate more for the differences in lifestyle. Because I know, I think the hardest thing is for working parents and that are trying to juggle. I was there. I remember the craziness that is created by schedules and things that everyone needs to do in trying to get to places. But you're training in a way to be better in prioritizing and being productive under pressure. As you think, Kelly, you work a lot with brands that are seeking the attention of Gen Zers. You wrote the dictionary on different wording. Does it look trite or does it look kind of cheap if a brand is trying too hard? Does it communicate, regardless of channel, does it communicate that we're trying too hard and try in order to get to you by using some of the terminology, or maybe creating a Snapchat channel or going on TikTok if you're, a financial institution? I've had that conversation too with those leaders. What do you think? How does authenticity? How is it valued?
I think that's a key word, and authenticity, and it's a great question. And I'll give you a tip of a new word is that you don't want to be chuggy, which is outdated or trying too hard to be trendy. So you don't want to be chuggy.
Hmm.
And I think you need to know these words just to show, don't try to be cool with it, but just show that you respect their lifestyle and their language. And it's just a way of connecting. And that's why I wrote the dictionary. It wasn't trying to encourage everybody to go memorize these words and really speak Gen Z, but it shows, it just is a way of connecting. But you can have fun with it. I've seen, when, uh, this flavor hits different. Well, I was almost shocked. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're using the slang right in the advertising. So especially if it's for the Gen Z audience, it works.
Yeah.
The financial institution just has to be careful, but I think showing, just don't overdo it.
Mhm.
But if you want to connect with them, that they'll like that. They think it's fun.
Or make the spokesperson be a Gen Zer. Like, I'll give you an
Exactly.
example. They were trying to reach Gen Zers, and they started doing education with NIL and athletes that are able to receive money now, trying to educate student athletes that are receiving funding through NIL of how to invest and what to do with their money. That's a perfect way to use financial education specifically for this group. And they had to approach it differently than they would if they were talking about wealth management. So it's a great example of the product has changed. The product is the same, but the audience is different and their needs are different as well.
Yes, because if it's just a formal, they don't want formal. Try to speak their language a little bit to make that connection. And if they know that you have an insight to their little world and that you're trying to connect,
Mhm.
then you will engage and have that engagement. But don't go over the top.
Right. It goes back to the very first topic we said is know your audience and don't assume that because you understand it that they will as well. But don't try too hard because it's going to rob you of authenticity. Have you seen some brands or the companies that you work with? Do they get it wrong, and or do they have amazing campaigns because they get it right?
Um, the brands that I'm working with are mostly, we're targeting millennials.
Uh-huh.
So, it's more connecting usually to the typical younger females, moms, young moms, or young
Uh-huh.
working women, and but in that way, in terms of marketing terms, it's not as much the language, but understanding their pain points.
Uh-huh.
And that's, as we all know, is marketing. Once you identify their pain points and know your personas, we get into more marketing. But when you know who you're talking to, then you can understand their world, and they're like, oh, they get me. And you will see that in advertising, no matter who they're targeting. When you see them talking about, we know you're struggling with this,
Mhm.
then they're like, okay, they know me. You've got my attention, because yeah, I am struggling with that.
Absolutely.
Having
So,
time to exercise is a typical one. So
yeah,
we know you struggle. You want to work out, but you just don't. Here's how we can make that work. You
we
can
have
have.
it. But again, if you say, look, I know this is a struggle, I know this works best for you, I'm going to use this channel of communication, you're pretty much building that relationship and loyalty with whoever it is that you're working with. And again, we are the ones that have to be more flexible. At the end of the day, we're the ones that have to also be productive. So it's such a balance. Don't forget to put in the chat #stronger if you want to get one of these little tumblers that we have that we give for a giveaway, and one of the dictionaries for Gen Z. Anything else that we didn't talk about? I'm going to just scan through the questions or the thoughts. Saeed, I know you're wondering about our shampoo, but I said related to our cross-generational channels. Let me see here. Fred told us where he's joining us from. And Glenn was talking about this coming back. Hope that we answered your question about working parents and cross-generational. I think we all learn, people with little people and others of different ages, we all learn as we grow and they grow how to communicate better. I know for me, for sure. Senja is saying, what would you suggest if you are not receiving communication in the format that resonates with you? Senja, I would go back to, is the team having any audits, or do you get together once a quarter and you say, how are things working out? Because this is difficult to go back and give feedback and saying you're bombarding me with emails and I can't keep up with it. Or I don't know if you have whoever the person is that you're working with, if there's not an opportunity to do that, I also recommend to turn it in of what's in it for them. If this person is your supervisor, you can say, look, I want to make you look like a rock star, and my job is to prioritize when I get an information. This is what works best for me. Can we work this out or find out why this is happening? Kelly, what thoughts do you have?
I encourage them that to use your preferred way, so that you will be able to respond faster. It's like,
Mhm.
hey, I'm sorry I keep missing your stuff. I'm not always on this channel, or whatever it
Yeah.
is. Um, and then just say, if you use email or texting or DMs or whatever, I will respond faster
Yeah.
to you, and we'll get the job done faster.
Yeah.
So usually
Yeah.
that's an incentive. It's like, oh, and everybody wants fast.
Yeah, yeah. If I missed something, I'm sorry. This is what works best. So I would give some feedback. But again, Sinja, if you can get the whole group to give feedback and connection, think about it just personality wise. Sometimes too, it doesn't work for people to be interrupted constantly on a regular basis and getting information. And or if you're needing to do some deep work and go offline somewhere, tell people that I'm not going to be available from this time to this time, and hopefully you can focus and get your work done. Thanks for adding the #stronger that you have us with. Kelly, do you have any other thoughts that we didn't talk about, Gen Z related or generally related?
So I would like to add in a little bit about the AI world. So we all are starting to embrace AI, and it is here. It's to stay, in my opinion. And I'm an AI junkie trying to learn and wrangle it. However, my tip to everyone and my mantra is keep it human and iterate, iterate, iterate. Never, never, never put something into ChatGPT or whatever platform, Copilot, and just use the first response. But iterate it and make it your own, and add, if it's an email, it's great to make yourself look more polished, but then change it up so that there's a personal thing that there's no way AI would know. Use your language. If there's an adjective you would never use, take that out. I'm forever just like, that does not sound like me, but it gave me the outline. Just know AI in terms of communication is your first draft. It is not to go to anybody. It's just your first draft, and to keep it human. And also in your communication, emails, whatever, try to personalize it and put some human energy, your personality into all your communication. So keep it human is my
Absolutely. AI, I agree. AI is here to stay. Just today, I entered something and I said, tighten it for me, or I need another word for this, but it has to be your content versus someone, something that's more formulaic, I would say. Samuel is asking the question we have been dancing around, just like saying, if I'm getting communication not in a way that I like to receive it and it's not working, how do I say that? And then Samuel's saying, would you ask the person about their best communication channel? Absolutely. And again, my grad assistant, as we started working together, I said, let's have a standing meeting once a week. But if it's quick little things, what's the best way to reach you? What's the best way to communicate with you? And immediately he said text. So that seemed to be okay. It's a great conversation to have, Samuel. But sometimes in the workplace, we've all adopted one another and we've worked together for a while, and we kind of need to take a time out, take maybe half a day and work through some things and make the communication conversation be part of that as well.
Absolutely. I agree. Just, find out what works for you, and don't be afraid to ask, like, hey, where are you most of the time? Email or your text or what? Because I don't want to bother you or my stuff to get lost or waiting.
Absolutely.
Yes.
What's the one thing you want people to remember, Kelly, from our conversation?
I would, if there's two, it would just respect where everybody's coming from a different place. They're not all like you. And to keep it human, put your own personality into your communication. Have a brand, a personal brand essence, and make your communication warm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. I think it's time we do our giveaway. And while we're putting that together, I love a good check-in call. Right. Shelby's talking about that. While we're doing that, I'm also going to tell you about something I'm posting tomorrow. Let's see who wins we're going to do two of these. We're going to give away one of the dictionaries and one of the tumblers. Let's do the tumbler first. And I love this little tool. Natasha was really there. Rebecca Willis. Yes, Rebecca, we're going to reach out and ask you for your address and we'll mail that. Let's do it one more time. And let's give away the dictionary, Gen Z dictionary. We'll mail it to you. We'll ask you for your address. Thank you so much for joining us today. Fred, yes, thanks for being here. We'll do that right away. As I'm saying goodbye, I think some of you that follow me on LinkedIn know that I just hit 100,000 followers. Thank you for following. If you don't, we'll put our handle right on the notes. But here's what's most important. I take this very seriously. I went back, reintroduced myself, and tomorrow I'm going to talk about the 3 buckets that I post about and ask for a very brave thing. I'm going to ask for feedback. A lot of the things that Kelly and I do in our courses, we ask middle way of the semester, what should I stop doing that I'm doing that's not working or is annoying you? What should I start doing that I'm not doing? And what should I keep doing that's working? So start, stop, keep. I'm going to actually tomorrow put this in a post, and I think we're going to put this in the notes. Give an anonymous survey where you can give feedback on start, stop, keep. You don't have to add your name. You could in the comments tomorrow, but you don't. I take this very seriously, and it's really important if you are here on this live that you also share with me what topics you'd like to see that relate to communication, showing up stronger and really being effective and having high performance in the workplace. So we're going to leave this there. And if you want to jump in and share some feedback, I'll report on it in a couple of weeks when we collect the data. I want to say a really big thank you to my friend Kelly. Thanks to all of you for participating. Follow us both on LinkedIn and have a great and very effectively communicating rest of your day. Bye-bye.